The histories of Westeros speak of Daemon Targaryen's exploits in the Stepstones, his marriage to Lena Valerian, and his eventual death at the God's Eye. But what they do not record is the shadow war he fought across the free cities of Essos, a campaign so secret that even his own family remained unaware of its true scope. This is the untold story of Daemon's greatest victory, a conflict that shaped the balance of power across the known world, while remaining hidden from the chronicles of his homeland. The seeds of war. The campaign began, not with armies or dragons, but with whispers in the slave markets of Lys. In the year 115 AC, 3 years before the Dance of Dragons would tear Westeros apart, Daemon Targaryen received intelligence that would change the course of his life. A network of spies, operating under the banner of a mysterious organization known only as the Crimson Compact, had discovered a conspiracy that threatened not just the Targaryen dynasty, but the very balance of power between East and West. The conspiracy centered around Triarch Lysandro Rogari of Lys, a man whose ambitions extended far beyond the traditional boundaries of free city politics. Lysandro had been secretly building an alliance between the most powerful families of Essos, uniting them under a single banner with the ultimate goal of conquering Westeros itself. The plan was audacious in its scope, a coordinated invasion that would strike simultaneously at King's Landing, Old Town, and Lannisport, overwhelming the Seven Kingdoms before they could mount an effective defense. But Lysandro's conspiracy went deeper than mere conquest. Through his network of spies and assassins, he had been systematically eliminating potential threats to his rule, including several minor Targaryen bastards who had fled to Essos over the years. More disturbing still, he had somehow acquired 3 dragon eggs, ancient relics that he planned to use in dark rituals designed to bind the spirits of dead dragons to his will. The intelligence reached Daemon through channels so secret that even King Viserys remained unaware of their existence. The Crimson Compact, an organization that claimed descent from the survivors of Old Valyria, had been watching the free cities for signs of exactly this kind of threat. When they approached Daemon with their evidence, they made him an offer he could not refuse. They would provide him with the resources and intelligence needed to destroy Lysandro's conspiracy. But in return, he would have to wage his war in absolute secrecy. The gathering storm. Daemon's first challenge was assembling a force capable of operating across multiple free cities without drawing attention from either his enemies or his own family. The solution came in the form of the Blackwater Company, a mercenary organization that officially existed to protect merchant vessels traveling between Westeros and Essos. In reality, the company was a front for Daemon's secret operations, staffed by hand-picked veterans who had sworn personal oaths of loyalty to the rogue prince. The company's nominal leader was Seer Harold Westerling, a knight who had been dismissed from the Kingsguard under mysterious circumstances, but whose loyalty to House Targaryen had never wavered. Under his command were 200 of the finest warriors that gold could buy, including former members of the Golden Company who had grown disillusioned with their exile, Dothraki bloodriders who had been cast out from their calices, and even a handful of former Unsullied who had somehow escaped their bondage. But Daemon's most valuable asset was not his soldiers, but his spies. The Crimson Compact had spent decades building a network of informants throughout the free cities, and they placed this entire apparatus at Daemon's disposal. Merchants, courtesans, slaves, and even magisters found themselves reporting to agents who answered ultimately to the rogue prince, creating an intelligence network that rivaled anything possessed by the Iron Throne itself. The campaign's first phase began in Pentos, where Lysandro had been courting Prince Regio Horatis with promises of Westerosi gold and Targaryen dragon eggs. Daemon's approach was characteristically direct, rather than attempting to outbid his rival. He simply had Regio assassinated during what appeared to be a robbery gone wrong. The prince's death threw Pentos into chaos, effectively removing the city from Lysandro's coalition before the war had even begun. The assassination was carried out by a team of faceless men, paid for with gold that officially came from Daemon's winnings at the Pentoshi fighting pits. The killers left behind evidence suggesting that the murder had been ordered by Regio's own brother, who had been growing increasingly jealous of the prince's power and influence. The resulting civil war kept Pentos occupied for months, exactly as Daemon had planned. The Myrish gambit with Pentos neutralized, Daemon turned his attention to Myr, where Lysandro had been working to secure the support of the city's powerful Spicers Guild. The guild controlled much of the trade in exotic spices and rare metals that flowed between Essos and Westeros, and their support would have provided Lysandro with the financial resources needed to fund his invasion. Daemon's strategy in Myr was more subtle than his approach in Pentos. Rather than resorting to assassination, he chose to undermine Lysandro's position through economic warfare, working through a network of shell companies and false identities. The Blackwater Company began buying up spice contracts and metal futures, driving prices to artificially high levels that made it impossible for Lysandro to secure the deals he needed. At the same time, Daemon's agents spread carefully crafted rumors about Lysandro's true intentions. They suggested that the Triarch planned to use his alliance with the Free Cities not to conquer Westeros, but to establish himself as the supreme ruler of Essos, with the other cities reduced to mere vassals. These rumors found fertile ground among the proud magisters of Myr, who had no intention of bowing to a Lysene upstart. That the campaign in Myr culminated in a spectacular piece of theater that demonstrated Daemon's understanding of both politics and human nature. During a grand feast hosted by the Spices Guild, a group of masked performers enacted a play that told the story of a Bermicious merchant who betrayed his partners and was ultimately destroyed by his own greed. The parallels to Lysandro's situation were unmistakable, and by the end of the evening, the Triarch's support in Myr had evaporated completely. The Tyroshi deception, the most complex phase of Daemon's campaign, took place in Tyrosh, where Lysandro had forged an alliance with Archon demon Blackfire, a descendant of Aegon the Conqueror's bastard brother, who had established himself as one of the most powerful men in the Free Cities. The Archon possessed not only vast wealth and a formidable army, but also a legitimate claim to the Iron Throne that made him potentially the most dangerous of Lysandro's allies. Daemon's approach to the Tyroshi problem required him to engage in the kind of intricate political maneuvering that he had always claimed to despise. Working through intermediaries, he began negotiating with various factions within Tyrosh, offering them incentives to withdraw their support from the Archon. At the same time, he spread disinformation designed to make Lysandro and the Archon suspicious of each other's motives. The key to Daemon's success in Tyrosh was his understanding of the city's unique political structure. Unlike the other free cities, which were ruled by councils of magisters or merchant princes, Tyrosh was dominated by a complex web of competing guilds, each with their own interests and agendas. By carefully playing these factions against each other, Daemon was able to create a situation where supporting the Archon became politically impossible. The breakthrough came when Daemon's agents discovered that the Archon had been secretly negotiating with slavers from Slaver's Bay, planning to use Tyroshi ships to transport enslaved Westerosi prisoners back to Essos after the Conquest. This information was leaked to the city's powerful Dyers Guild, whose members had strong moral objections to slavery and who wielded considerable influence over Tyroshi politics. The revelation sparked riots throughout Tyrosh, with guild members demanding the Archon's removal from power, rather than risk a civil war. The city's ruling council voted to exile the Archon and his supporters, effectively ending Lysandro's hopes of Tyroshi support. The Archon himself disappeared during the chaos, and rumors suggested that he had been killed by Daemon's agents, though no proof was ever found. The Volantine conspiracy, the most dangerous phase of Daemon's campaign, took place in Volantis, the oldest and most powerful of the free cities. Here, Lysandro had forged an alliance with the Triarch Malakwa Mugir, a descendant of the old Valyrian nobility, who commanded both the loyalty of the city's Tiger Party and access to the largest fleet in the known world. If Lysandro could secure Volantin support, his invasion of Westeros would become not just possible, but probable. Daemon's intelligence network in Volantis was led by a mysterious figure, known only as the Crimson Widow, a woman who claimed to be the last surviving member of a Valyrian Dragonlord family that had been destroyed during the Doom. The Widow had spent decades building a network of spies and assassins throughout the city, and she placed this entire organization at Daemon's disposal in exchange for his promise to help her reclaim her family's lost holdings. The Volantin phase of the campaign was marked by a series of spectacular assassinations that eliminated key supporters of the Triarchy's alliance with Lysandro. The victims included 2 elephant lords who had promised to provide war elephants for the invasion, a high priest of R'hllor who had been blessing Lysandro's cause, and even a member of the Triarch's own family who had been serving as a liaison with the Lysene delegation. Each assassination was carried out in a different manner, creating the impression that multiple organizations were working against the alliance. Some victims were poisoned with rare toxins that could only be obtained in the Shadowlands. Others were killed by weapons that bore the marks of Dothraki craftsmanship, and still others simply disappeared without a trace. Their bodies never found. The campaign in Volantis reached its climax during the Festival of Flames. an annual celebration that brought together the city's most powerful citizens. Daemon himself attended the festival, disguised as a merchant from Norvos, and personally oversaw the operation that would destroy Lysandro's conspiracy once and for all. The Dragon's Gambit, the climax of Daemon's secret war, came not through armies or assassinations, but through a display of power that reminded the free cities why the Targaryens had once ruled the known world. On the final night of the Festival of Flames, as Triarch Malakwo prepared to formally announce his alliance with Lysandro, Caraxes appeared in the skies above Volantis. The great red dragon's arrival was perfectly timed to coincide with the festival's climactic moment, when the city's priests would light the great flame that burned atop the Black Wall. As the flame roared to life, Caraxes descended from the clouds, his own fire joining with the sacred flame to create a spectacle that could be seen for miles. Around Daemon, still disguised as a merchant, stood in the crowd and watched as panic spread through the assembled dignitaries. The sight of a living dragon, the first to be seen in Volantis since the Doom, was enough to shatter the confidence of even the most powerful magician. When Caraxes landed atop the Black Wall itself, his roar echoing across the city, the message was unmistakable. The Targaryens were watching, and they would not tolerate threats to their rule. The psychological impact of the dragon's appearance was devastating to Lysandro's cause. Within hours, his allies began withdrawing their support, claiming that they had been deceived about the true nature of his plans. Triarch Malakwo himself publicly renounced the alliance, declaring that Volantis would never again risk the wrath of the Dragon Lords. But Daemon's masterstroke was yet to come. As Caraxes circled the city, the dragon's keen eyes spotted something that human intelligence had missed: a ship in the harbor flying Lysine colors, its hold filled with the 3 dragon eggs that Lysandro had somehow acquired. The eggs were the key to the Triarch's ultimate plan, the source of the dark magic he intended to use against Westeros. The final confrontation, the destruction of Lysandro's conspiracy, required one final, desperate gambit. The Triarch had retreated to his stronghold on the Isle of Tears, a fortress built on the ruins of an ancient Valyrian outpost. There, surrounded by his most loyal followers and protected by powerful wards, he began the ritual that would bind the spirits of dead dragons to his will. Daemon's assault on the Isle of Tears was unlike anything in the annals of warfare. Blackwater Company approached the island in ships disguised as merchant vessels, while Daemon himself flew overhead on Caraxes, hidden by clouds and darkness. The attack began at dawn, with the mercenaries storming the fortress, while the dragons struck from above. The battle was fierce but brief. Lysandro's followers, demoralized by the collapse of their conspiracy and terrified by the presence of a living dragon, offered little resistance. The Triarch himself was found in the fortress's deepest chamber, surrounded by the 3 dragon eggs and the corpses of a dozen sacrificial victims. The confrontation between Daemon and Lysandro was as much a battle of wills as a physical combat. The Triarch had succeeded in partially completing his ritual, and the spirits of ancient dragons flickered around him like shadows made of flame. But his power was nothing compared to the bond between a true Dragon Lord and his mount. Fire consumed the dark magic, destroying the corrupted dragon spirits and reducing the stolen eggs to ash. Lysandro himself died as he had lived. Consumed by his own ambitions, the dark magic he had sought to control turned against him, and his body was found burned beyond recognition. A fitting end for one who had dared to challenge the power of the dragon. The hidden victory, the destruction of Lysandro's conspiracy, marked the end of Daemon's secret campaign. But the war's true significance lay not in the battles fought, but in the threats prevented. The intelligence gathered by the Crimson Compact revealed that the conspiracy had been far more extensive than anyone had imagined, with tentacles reaching into every corner of the known world. In addition to the free cities, Lysandro had been building alliances with the Dothraki Chals, the slave masters of Slavers Bay, and even the mysterious rulers of the Shadowlands. His ultimate goal had been nothing less than the complete conquest of West, followed by the establishment of a new Valyrian empire, with himself as its emperor. The campaign's success had far-reaching consequences that would shape the balance of power for generations to come. The free cities, chastened by their brush with disaster, became more cautious in their dealings with Westeros. The slave trade, deprived of Lysandro's organizing influence, fragmented into competing factions that were easier for future abolitionists to combat. Most importantly, the dragon eggs that might have been used to create new threats were destroyed, ensuring that the Targaryens would remain the only dragon lords in the world. The price of Daemon's victory in Essos came at a personal cost that few could have imagined. The need for absolute secrecy meant that he could never claim credit for his greatest triumph, never receive recognition for saving his family and his kingdom from destruction. Even his own brother, King Viserys, remained unaware of the service Daemon had performed. The psychological toll of the campaign was evident in Daemon's behavior upon his return to Westeros. Those who knew him noted that he had become more withdrawn, more prone to brooding silences and sudden bursts of anger. The weight of the secrets he carried, combined with the knowledge of how close the realm had come to disaster, left him changed in ways that would influence his actions during the Dance of Dragons. The Blackwater Company was quietly disbanded, its members scattered to the four winds, with generous pensions and strict instructions never to speak of their service. Many of them would later serve in other conflicts, but none would ever reveal the true nature of their greatest victory. The Crimson Compact, their purpose fulfilled, faded back into the shadows from which they had emerged, leaving behind only whispered legends and carefully hidden records. The legacy of Shadows, the true measure of Daemon's secret campaign, was not in the battles won or enemies defeated, but in the disasters prevented and the lives saved. By destroying Lysandro's conspiracy before it could fully mature, he had prevented a war that would have dwarfed even the Dance of Dragons in its scope and devastation. The invasion fleet that never sailed, the cities that never burned, the innocents who never died. These were the true victories of the Shadow War. The campaign also established precedents that would influence Targaryen policy for generations to come. The intelligence networks created during the war continued to operate long after Daemon's death, providing the Iron Throne with early warning of threats from across the Narrow Sea. The relationships forged with the Crimson Compact and other secret organizations would prove invaluable during future crises, creating a web of alliances that extended far beyond the borders of Westeros. Perhaps most importantly, the campaign demonstrated that the Targaryens' power extended far beyond their dragons and their armies. The ability to project influence across the known world, to shape events through intelligence and intrigue rather than fire and blood, became a crucial component of their rule. Future kings and queens would remember the lessons of Daemon's secret war, understanding that sometimes the greatest victories were those that remained hidden from history. The unwritten history, the story of Daemon Targaryen's secret campaign in Essos remains one of the most closely guarded secrets in the history of West. The official chronicles make no mention of Lysandro's conspiracy, the Blackwater Company, or the Shadow War that saved the Seven Kingdoms from invasion. Even the maesters of the Citadel, with their vast libraries and extensive networks of correspondence, remained unaware of the true scope of what transpired. This silence was not accidental, but carefully orchestrated. The survivors of the campaign, bound by oaths of secrecy and the knowledge that revelation would endanger not just themselves but their families, took their secrets to their graves. The records that did exist were hidden in places known only to a select few, protected by wards and guardians that would ensure their preservation for future generations, who might need to understand the true cost of peace. The irony of Daemon's greatest victory is that it could never be celebrated, never be remembered, never be used to enhance his reputation or secure his legacy. The rogue prince, who had always craved recognition and glory, had achieved his most significant triumph in absolute anonymity. The war that Westeros never knew had been won by a hero whose name would never be associated with the victory. Yet perhaps this anonymity was fitting for a man who had always operated outside the conventional bounds of honor and duty. Daemon Targaryen had saved his family and his kingdom, not for glory or recognition, but because it was necessary. In doing so, he had demonstrated that true heroism sometimes required the sacrifice, not just of life, but of the very memory of one's deeds. The secret campaign in Essos stands as a testament to the complexity of power and the hidden costs of peace. Behind every stable kingdom, every prosperous city, every generation that lives without war, there are those who fight in the shadows, who make the hard choices, who bear the burden of secrets that can never be shared. Daemon Targaryen's war was one such conflict, a victory so complete that its very existence had to be erased from history. In the end, the greatest tribute to Daemon's success was the world that continued to exist because of his actions. The children who grew up in peace, the merchants who traded without fear, the scholars who studied in libraries that were never burned, all of them owed their lives to a war they would never know was fought, to a hero whose name they would never learn, to a victory that could never be celebrated but would never be forgotten by those who understood its true significance. The dragon had protected the realm, not with fire and blood, but with shadow and silence. and in that protection lay the true measure of his greatness.